Before I introduce our speaker, I want to remind you of the meeting immediately after. We'll meet right up here for about 5 or 10 minutes. It'll be very short. This evening we have a guest speaker. We've been supporting Ron Coleman for a long time, and he's been doing mission work far longer than that in India. And Briant Perry is here with us this evening from the Buckingham Road congregation where Briant goes on 1 or 2 trips a year for the past 8 years. Is that what you said?
About 15 years.
15 years, so I was way off. But anyway, he goes over there with him, has done several other places with Ron, and he's come to give us a report on the work that is going on there. So, brother, please, thank you.
Good evening. Well, I was asked by Mr. Graham to come and give a little report on the India orphans, I think, that y'all support. So I was happy to do that. But he didn't tell me how long to speak. So I'll probably have you out of here by 8 or 9. Is that okay? Well, you know, when they were preaching in the upper room, they preached to midnight. So 8 or 9 is pretty good, right? But anyway, I want to tell you about the orphan home. But I also want to tell you about just the work in India altogether. So let's take a look at that. If I push the right button, hopefully. Yeah, okay. So the last time I was able to go, well, this is only January, but we normally go in January to India. And so I did make a trip in 2020. But because of everything is still shut down in India, and kind of like here, we probably won't be able to make a trip this year. So on January 9th of last year, we started our flight to India. To get to India, it's a 20-plus hour trip. So it's not for the faint at heart. If you're claustrophobic, you probably don't want to go to India. You'll be stuck on a plane for a while. We did manage to stop in London for, I think we had about a 4-hour layover, which is pretty good. It kind of breaks it up for us. And we managed to get some real food. So if you travel, you probably know about airplane meals. It's not the best. We arrived in India on Saturday. I don't know if you noticed on that one slide, it said we left on Thursday. So we lost a day in there. But no worries, I'll gain it back when I come back home. So we fly into Bangalore, India, which is not even in the state that we're working in, but they've started cracking down on people coming to India, especially if you're coming to do church work. And so it's easier for us to get into Bangalore than it is to get into Vijayawada or Hyderabad. It's where the places that we work. So we fly into Bangalore, and then we take a puddle jumper, is what I call them, a smaller plane, to Vijayawada where we work. So Jesus tells us to make disciples of all nations. And when we go to India, we do this by, if I can click it enough, preacher training, youth camps, gospel meetings, benevolence work, and some work at Elnora Orphan Home. So let's meet the team from 2020. Okay, on the, what is that? Left-hand side of the picture is Ron Coleman, which you know, and on the right-hand side is Don Ozzie. He's from Anacortes, Washington, and I've worked with both of these guys for, like I say, about 15 years going to India, and Ron even longer than that, going to other countries. Sometimes we have more people that go with us to India, but most of the time it's just the 3 of us on these trips. So Ron and Don conduct preacher training classes during the day. The best way to evangelize in India is to teach the Indian people how to convert people. So Ron and Don teach preacher training classes. They have men come in from hundreds of miles, stay at the church building, and they get a week of training. It's young preachers is what it is. They get a week of training there. And while they're doing their preacher training during the day, I conduct what they call youth camps. It's like a super VBS. I think the most I've had, one year I think I've had 400 kids. Yeah, it's kind of frightening sometimes. So but it's a lot of fun. And then at night, we all go to different places and conduct gospel meetings. So I want to tell you a little bit about Indian culture, some things that I've seen in India. So I call this strange but true. So strange but true, we're going to look at some interesting facts and some things that I've seen. So, India is the only country with a Bill of Rights for, can you guess? A cow. Because they worship cows in India, cows do have a Bill of Rights. That's strange but true. And because they worship cows, they don't eat beef. So, India is has the largest number of vegetarians in the world. Now, traffic is terrible in India. I think I travel most of India with my eyes closed if I'm in a car, because it really is pretty bad. And I think there has to be a billion motorcycles, and it seems like they're all on one intersection at once. And with those motorcycles, we see things being carried. We don't see a lot of trucks, but we see things carried on motorcycles. I've seen goats. I've seen rebar, big pieces of rebar carried. Car batteries, you name it, I've probably seen it being carried on a motorcycle. The women ride side saddle on the motorcycles. It's kind of interesting. There's a funny one. Now, I've seen many different strange things being carried on a motorcycle, but 5 people on a motorcycle? In that picture is 5 people. I've seen it. But I've heard that there's been 7 people on a motorcycle. But in this picture here, there's, I think, 6 people and 2 dogs. Okay. So the biggest religion in India is Hinduism. And because of that, you'll see, and because of the Hindu religion has over 1 million gods, you see statues or temples everywhere you look. You can't go a minute without seeing some temple. You can even buy a small temple and take it home to put your God in. That's how much they worship their gods. So we'll just take a look at some of their temples here. Now, this statue here, I was told, represents all the religions, all the different kind of religions that the Indian people worship or has. And if I understood my translator right, it even represents Jesus. I don't know if you can tell by the slide, but there's all kind of different animals, monkeys, lions, all kind of different things in that one statue right there. And you really can't tell by the slide, but that thing it's got to be 200 or 300 feet tall. It's huge. And we pass it when we drive into town. We pass it every time we go. So I call it the crazy monkey statue. You can't tell by its face, but it is a monkey. So this was our hotel that we stayed in. During the time we were there, this particular time, they had a Hindu festival. And if you look close at those are all flower petals that they made that sign right there out of. And so you have to be careful when you're walking through the hotel because you wouldn't want to mess up their artwork there. Okay. So I've seen many, many strange things in India. Some things were funny, some things were sad. But I think the best thing that I saw when I was in India is this next slide. Don't know where she got the shirt, but There's the shirt right there. Okay, back to the work. Okay, so I don't speak any of the languages in India, so everywhere we go, we have a translator. They speak English. They don't want to really speak English to you, but they do speak English and understand it because they learn it from elementary up. And so they can understand, most of them can, but we always have a translator. So the guy here in the picture with me, his name is Vandan Kumar Undamata, and he's one of the preachers that we go around with when we work in India. This is just one of the smaller churches that we went to. So last year when I went, I have a theme every year when I go for my VBS, and last year it was broken, transformed, and renewed. And so what we do, we have lessons, and then we have a craft to reinforce the lesson. So right here you see this young lady holding, the craft was from being transformed. So this is a caterpillar that unfolds into a butterfly, and that's what we made right there. Well, no, I didn't go by Hawaii on my way to India. In India, also, anywhere you go, you'll get a lay. And so if I go to this church and I go to another church 15 minutes down the road, I'll get another one. I mean, I've come home one night, my hotel one night, and I had maybe 5 of them around my neck, and they love to give them to you. They just really enjoy that. I don't so much, but they do. A little bit allergic to flowers, so anyway. But anyway, here's another church we work with. And some of the buildings, the church buildings in India is probably no bigger. I mean, I haven't seen your classrooms, but I could just imagine they're so small, it's probably no bigger than your classroom. Some of them are pretty small, but they'll have church pretty much anywhere. Also, they have church on the tents. I think that's a tent. Yeah. And so they have, I call them pop-up meetings. They'll just throw something together, throw a tent out on the street, have church. Let me back up on that one right there. I was going to show you this particular one. They actually had chairs in that church building. They were those plastic fold-up, not fold-up, stackable chairs. Most church buildings you sit on the floor. So. So there's Ron Coleman. As I said, during the daytime, they conduct preacher training classes. He would teach half the day, and then they would switch off, and Dunn would teach the other half. And then at night again, we all went to do gospel meetings. This was, I'm not sure where that was, but it was just out on the ground. They just decided to have a gospel meeting, and they took us out, and we had a gospel meeting. That's just some of the crafts that we made at one of the VBS. This was a family that invited us into their home to hold the gospel meeting. So we just went. Everybody crowded in around the floor in different rooms, but their homes are so small also you could hear from the whole house. So. Something that I don't like, but I'm going to tell you an interesting thing. I don't know if you can see that, but behind me on that banner is a picture of me. I don't know if you can see the outline of my head right there. I mean, I walked up and it's a huge picture there. I'm like, why? But anyway. But they really enjoy putting the posters up and making you feel really welcome, and I think they really enjoy doing that. So, but at the end of our youth camps, we would give all the kids a certificate, and that's what I'm giving the little girl a certificate there. That was another church we went to and had a youth camp. So, and I say youth camp, the ages were from 5 years old to like maybe early 20s. But They don't have VBSs every year like we do here. And so even some of the older people really enjoy coming and getting to participate and stuff like that. Now here is the other preacher training class, and that's Don Ozzie there teaching. Now, the youth camp was just held down in a field. They threw up a tent. And this was after the class. They like to play out there, so. So the results of our trip from this past year were 43 baptisms total. 27 of those came from the youth meetings, and 16 were from the gospel meetings. Many seeds were planted, and many were helped through benevolence. But I know what I came here to speak about tonight was El Nora's orphan home, so let's talk about that. Okay. So this picture here is out in front of El Nora's orphan home. That is most of the orphans that live in the home. So I want to thank you for your support for keeping the home going. The home is supported just by different churches and different Christians throughout the United States. They don't take any money from the government at all during India. This is Raja and Kumari Undamala. They are the directors of the home. So the home is located in a region of Vijayawada called Jakaputi. I can't pronounce the names. Okay. Jakaputi is pretty close. But anyway, Raja and Kumari started the home. They started because they saw a need, and they used to just bring in some kids into their home, a few at a time, and the need kept growing and growing and growing. And so that's how they started the home. I don't know if you can see the big red arrow, but that's the region in India where the home is. Now, the home is called El Nora's Orphan Home because Don Ozzie, the other preacher that goes with us, when they first had the need to help the kids, she used to send money, and then she and her ladies' Bible class would collect money and send it to the orphans over there, and that's why they named it up to her, because she kind of started the support from here in the U.S. and it's grown over the past, let's see, I think I've been going for 15 years, but the home wasn't there when I first started, so it's over 10 years old, but I don't have an exact number of the age of the home. At the present time, there are 55 kids that is in the orphan home. I just found out this morning there was 58 kids in the orphan home, but I found out this morning when I talked to the director that 3 of the girls has been married off. I don't know if you know, but India, they still do arranged marriages. And so the young ladies, they're all young when they get married off, pretty young. Probably anywhere between 18 and 21 or something, they'll be married. If you're over 21, they probably consider you an old maid. You're past time to get married, they would say. So the ages is from 7 to 20. There's 37 boys and 18 girls. So at the orphan home, there's kids called orphans, and there's kids called semi-orphans. And it may sound strange, but let me explain to you. So orphans are kids with no parents at all. And so they stay in the home. And then semi-orphans, they may have a parent, usually a widow woman who remarries, and if the new husband doesn't want the kids, then he sends them away. And so they have to stay in the orphan home. Or they may have some family, but the family is so poor that they can't take care of the kids, and so they stay in the orphan home. And they're called semi-orphans because they do have family, but they're orphans. So, but there's both kinds that stay at the orphan home. So it takes $35 to $40 a month for each kid to take care of their food, their shelter, and their education. So their food, their meals consist of a lot of rice and either a chicken or goat curry and a lot of vegetables. But I mean, for them, that's a lot of food. It's more food than they would get in some other places in India. But that's what most Indian people eat anyway. They eat a lot of the chicken curries and the goat curries and vegetables. Also on the left side there, you see one of their cooks at the orphanage. They cook in big pots outside. That's how they cook everything, all the meals. And then they line the kids up on the floor. They don't have tables. Or they don't use tables, I should say, to eat at. They eat on the floor. So there's a picture of the orphanage building. So this building here is actually the second location of Eleanor's orphan home. They outgrew the first one. The need is great in India, and it never ends. It just keeps adding up and up. You could fill that building, you could build another building beside it, fill it up, and they would keep coming because that's the way it is in India. India is very poor. But if you can see, yeah, I think you can tell on the picture, they build their buildings in India and they leave rebar on the top. And so if they want to add another floor, they just start adding up, and they'll add another floor and add another floor. So that's what they're doing there. They're renovating the building to add another floor. So could you imagine having all your worldly belongings in a suitcase? That's pretty much what the kids have. They have what they call them trunks. They are little trunks. And everything they own is in that trunk. All of their clothes, which they don't have many clothes, all of their clothes, any little trinkets, toys, whatever they have, will be kept in that trunk. And so they keep that in their room, and then they also have mats that they sleep on. But that may be odd to us, we sleep on mattresses, but a lot of Indian people sleep on mats, so it's not unusual, or it's not cruel to the kids, it's just the way that's their culture. They sleep on the floor like that, so. So that's their shelter. Education. Education in India is not free. They don't have public schools like we do. You have to pay if you go to school. So the orphanage, part of that $35 to $40 provides for all the kids to go to school. So here you see on the left, all the boys are dressed in their school uniforms, and then on the right, all the girls are dressed, ready to go to school. And the odd thing, well, it's odd to us, but it's not odd to them. They always separate all the boys on one side and all the girls on the other side. That's just the way they do it. Even in church, all the ladies would be on one side, all the men would be on the other side. It's very unusual. Maybe an elderly person or an elderly couple might be together, but anybody else is going to be separated. So $35 to $40 a month takes care of food, shelter, and education for the kids at Eleanor's orphan home. There's red tape here in the U.S., there's red tape in India. So a couple of years ago, the government started giving trouble to Christian-run orphan homes. And so the inspectors started handing out strict regulations, so strict that really small Christian-run orphan homes can never obtain what they want them to obtain. So an example of that would be like a 30-passenger bus, or maybe more staff members, or maybe an on-call doctors. And then the biggest one that they've run into is separate buildings for boys and girls. And so really, a home this small cannot obtain all those restrictions or regulations that they want them to do. So, and it's because they're actually looking for a bribe is what they want. They want to be paid under the table, and then all the regulations go away. But let's see. And so because of these regulations, as I said, they want the boys and the girls in two separate buildings. Right now at Eleanor's orphan home, the girls are being housed in a couple of Christians' homes. They had to take them off campus. So the boys are still at the home, but the girls are being housed in several different Christian homes. And so the money is kind of spread around to some Christian homes to help provide for the girls. And I think they still kind of get together sometimes, but for the most part, the girls are away right now. And the reason that that they don't want to take any money from the government is because if they don't, then they can still teach Bible at the Christian home, at the Christian orphan home. And right here, they're being taught Bible, and they have to recite. Everybody has to get up and recite the verses that they've learned, and that's what this young man here is doing, is reciting a verse. And again, you see the girls on one side and the boys on the other side. But even with all the regulations and all the things they have to go through, they still provide a healthy, safe place for all the kids that they find. Beside the orphan home is a big open field, and they like to go out and play cricket. They play cricket. They play cricket, they play volleyball, or any other kind of ball that they love to play. So all the kids, they get plenty of exercise out there. So every year when I go, I collect some little gifts. It's just little trinket toys, what we would call trinkets, but they really love to get that kind of stuff. And so I take my bag of toys and candy and stuff like that they're not used to getting, and they really look forward to getting those things every year I come. So I'm sure they've missed me not being there in January this year. So I've missed not being there in January this year. I really enjoy going and working with the Indian brothers and sisters over there. That wasn't the last year, it was year before, but I took them all little water bottles, just little plastic water bottles, and they really enjoy getting that. Oops. Too far? Yeah. Okay, so once again, I want to thank you for allowing me just to share a little bit of the work in India, and I really appreciate the work that y'all are doing here to collect funds to send to the orphan home, because it really helps. As I said, the need can never be outgrown in India, unfortunately. And so I'm always talking to the director there, and he's always asking, can you get some more support, more support? Like, I'll try, I'll do what I can, but you know, I know that the need is so great, and that's why he keeps asking, but I really appreciate the support that y'all give here. All right, thank you. So, anytime we get together as a congregation or a church, we always like to offer an invitation. Of course, the Lord's invitation is always open at any time, but when we get together, we like to formally offer that invitation. So we'll do that in just a moment, but I would like to read a couple of verses first, or a little story first. A little boy is playing in a sandbox. As he was digging, he discovered a huge rock in the middle of the sandbox. He dug around it, loosened up the big rock, and he pushed it over to the edge of the sandbox. But that's when his problems began. He couldn't lift it up over the edge of the sandbox and push it out. He pushed it with his feet, he pulled and tugged, and he could not get it out of the sandbox. Well, his father was standing in the window watching all this activities going on, and he saw the little boy begin to cry. So he went out and talked to him. He said, "Why didn't you use all your power to remove the stone?" The boy replied, "I did. I pushed with my hands and my feet only to fail." "No, son," his father answered. "You didn't call me." With that being said, his father moved the rock to the outside of the box. Aren't we like that with God a lot of times? We use our own power only to fail. For whatever reason, we tend to miss God in our everyday scheme of life. People tend to reach out to God when they're in crisis, but not in their everyday living. We do ask the Father for help sometimes. Ephesians 3, 14 and 15. "For this reason I kneel down before the Father, from whom his whole family in heaven and on earth derives its name." So if the little boy in the story had realized his father's power, I think he would have gone and asked the Father. I think he knew his father was there, but he forgot the Father's power and his ability to remove the rock. How many times are we like that with God? Jonah chapter 2, verse 7. So Jonah, while in the belly of the whale, he prayed in verse 7, "When my life was ebbing away, I remembered you, Lord, and my prayer rose to you, to your holy temple." So we don't ever want to let our situation get that bad before we remember God. If we would just remember that the Father, if we would just remember the Father and trust that He has the power to remove the rocks in our lives, we could do a lot of great things. So what do you think the little boy that we just talked about at the beginning of our lesson thought after his father removed the rock? He may have thought, "Wow, how strong." He may have thought, "Wow, the strength is mine anytime I need it." Or he may have thought, "I can trust my Father to do anything for me." When we realize all that God can do for us, we too can say what Paul says in Ephesians 3, verses 20 and 21. "Now to Him who is able to do immensely more than we ask or imagine, according to the power that is at work in us, to Him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen." So if you have a need this evening that we can come together and pray about, or if you would like to give your life to Christ or rededicate your life to Christ, please come as together we stand and sing.